Every scorekeeper has their own way of keeping score. We are going to show you some of the basics using the Advanced Softball Scoresheet designed by Dawn Brotherton. Not only is this book larger, unlike most books, it has instructions in the back for new scorekeepers and a worksheet for the coach to prepare various fielding combinations. When you're keeping score, you keep it for both teams. I would recommend that you always use this side for your team because it has a summary section where you can summarize what that player did throughout the whole game. And then use this side for the team you're playing against. When you're keeping score, there's a shorthand that you use. Even though it's first base, second base, third base, those aren't the numbers that you use when you're keeping score. When you look at this diagram, you can see the pitcher is actually number 1. So it goes pitcher 1, catcher 2, then first base is 3, second base is 4, third base is 5, and shortstop is 6. Then it's left field, center field, right field. You see a little 10 there, that's for a slow pitch game. They have an extra outfielder that floats, but it's not used during fast pitch. So these are the numbers that we're going to use for the shorthand for the rest of the book. You obviously want to keep track of the date you're playing, the park that you're playing in, and most games these days have a start time and an end time. Their duration can vary depending on if it's a Saturday or a Sunday game or whatever the league is. There are many different softball leagues, Softball Nation, ASA, so the rules are different. You want to make sure you mark which league you're playing that game under. Here's where you put your lineup, and notice there's place to put at least 3 different players in the same batting order. Always use the top line for the first person so you have space left over when the coach wants to put in a second or a third player. This column is actually for positions. Where you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, those are counting which inning you're talking about. So if this first player is playing third base during the first inning, right where it says 1 for first inning, you would put 5, which is the shorthand version of third base. Then if they move to second base in the second inning, where it says 2, you would put the number 4. If they stay at second base for the rest of the game, you would put 4 in every one of these blocks. This scorebook has a lot more detail in it than most scorebooks do. These boxes down here are for balls and strikes. Notice there are 3 and 2. We know balls and strikes are 3 strikes, 4 balls. But what you want to do is every time a ball is pitched, you're going to put a mark in one of these. Once it hits 4, you're going to mark that the person got base on balls, which is BB. Let me go through each one of these codes at the top. 1B means single. It doesn't mean they made it to first base. It means they got a single, which is a hit. We're going to go into more detail about that later. 2B is a double, 3B, triple, HR, home run. FC is a fielder's choice. We'll talk about that more later too, but basically a fielder's choice is the ball was hit, the person might have gotten out if they'd made a play on them, but the fielder chose to throw it to a different base. BNT is bunt, BB, base on balls, or a walk. HP means hit by the pitch. In fast pitch, if the pitcher hits the batter with the ball, not in the hands, they get their base. SAC stands for sacrifice. That can be a sacrifice fly ball or it can be a sacrifice bunt. Basically, the runner got out, the batter got out, but a run was scored. So it's considered a sacrifice and it doesn't count against their batting average. Down here we have 2 spots. RBI, run batted in, which means when the batter hit the ball, how many runs scored because of that play. It may be one, it may be none. ERR stands for error. If their batter gets on base because of an error, they don't get credit for a hit for their batting average. So you want to know that that was an error on whom. They hit it to the shortstop bobbled it, so it would be a 6, an error on 6. At the bottom, I've left extra space so you can take notes if something strange happens. There are some plays that multiple things happen at once, or they threw the ball around or went out of play. This extra space in this book will give you more room to write. Now we're going to look at some actual plays and show you how to write them in the book. So I'm going to give you some examples, just using a scrap piece of paper here. And as you can see, we have our lineup. These are their jersey numbers, and it's the first inning. So Sarah is playing the pitcher, Julie's at second base, Erica is in left field. Now Sarah is up to bat, and let's say the first pitch is a strike. This is the strike column, so we're going to put a line showing that there's a strike. A helpful tip for your coach is, if that's the first pitch, color in the block. Some pitchers have a tendency to always throw the first pitch the same way. It'll always be a ball or it'll always be a strike. This will show if there's a trend. That's a tip, it's not required. Say the next ball is actually a ball, meaning not in the strike zone. And then the next pitch. On the next pitch, we'll say that she swung at the ball, but she missed it. That's still a strike. On the next play, we will say that she hits the ball to the shortstop. Now, if you remember, shortstop is number 6. And the shortstop picked it up and threw it to the first baseman. And she got her out. So we're going to say it went from 6, and you can write right over top of these boxes, the 6 to 3. So she went from shortstop to first base, and she got an out. So you just write the number 1 and you circle it. That way, when you circle the outs, it's easier to see when people ask you how many outs we have. Now Julie's up to bat. She's the second batter. There's nobody on base because Sarah got out. But let's say Julie hits the ball into right field. And it's a good hit. Nobody touched it. There were no errors. Nobody caught it. So she gets credit for a single, and we put her on first base. Another helpful hint is to show where she hit it, so the coach has some idea. So if it was a shallow, meaning it didn't go over the right fielder's head, you would put a little X there. If it was a deep, so maybe it hit the fence, you would put the mark out even further. This is especially important for the defensive side, the team you're playing against. It's nice to mark where they hit the ball so you can position the player so they have the best chance of catching it. So now we're going to get a little trickier because we have a base runner. Erica is up to bat. We have a base runner on first. On the first pitch, she gets a ball. So we're going to mark it as a ball. It was a bad pitch. She didn't swing at it. On the second one, she swung, but she missed it. On the next one, let's say she hit the ball and it went to second base. The second baseman fields it cleanly, but instead of throwing to try to get Erica out, the second baseman is going to try to get Julie out because she's ahead. That is what is considered a fielder's choice. So even though Erica hit it to the second baseman picked up the ball and threw it to the shortstop who is covering second base. So Julie gets out when the second baseman throws it to shortstop and got Julie out. So that's the second out, and Erica gets credit for a fielder's choice, and we put her on base. Okay, now Sam's up. She hits the ball into left field, and it's caught by the left fielder. So that would be F for fly ball. She hit it to left field, which is 7, and that's the third out. At the end of the inning, you mark a slash like this across so that you know next inning when you start, you won't use these blocks. You'll skip over to the next column to show that you're in the next inning. All right, the other team has batted. We got 3 outs. Now we're back to our side again, and we're batting. Jennifer's up. She's the first batter in the second inning. She gets up, and the first pitch is a strike. The second pitch is a strike. On the third pitch, she swings and she misses. That means she's got 3 strikes. It's a strikeout. Because she swung at it, we're going to put the K forward. If she had just stood there and watched the pitch go by, we would have made the K backward. Susie's up to bat. On the first pitch, it's a ball. The next pitch is a strike. The next pitch is a strike. Now Susie starts fouling off. A foul ball is considered a strike, but it cannot be the third strike unless the ball is caught. So, if you just want to keep track of how many times Susie had a swing, which the coach might want to know, you start putting dots for every time she fouls off the ball. Because that will show the coach how much she was battling, how many times she swung and made contact with the ball before she finally hit it. So now we're going to say after all these foul balls, she hit the ball into left center field really deep, and she made it all the way to second base. Okay, so we've made it all the way to the bottom of our lineup, and we're starting again back up at the top. We're still in the second inning, so we're going to start in the second inning column with Sarah. There are some people already on base, but now Sarah's up to bat. And on the first pitch, she bunts the ball. I'm going to give her credit for a bunt. The pitcher picks up the ball and throws it to first base. But Sarah's so fast, she beats it out. So she gets credit for getting a single because she beat out the play. Let's put her on first base. So now we have somebody on first base and third base. You have to remember when people move here, when your batter gets on, you have to remember to go back to your other squares and advance those runners. All right, I'm going to fast forward through a few plays, and we're going to pretend that Sarah has scored. As these players advance, so this one hit and got on, then you moved Sarah up. Well, then Erica hit, and let's say Erica got a double. So she got a double. We'll give Julie a single the first time. Don't forget, you have to move Julie along because she's no longer on first base. Now she's on third. Well, Sarah scored on that one. Sarah scored when Erica hit the double. So we're going to color in the box. That's so at a glance you can quickly count up the number of colored in boxes and figure out how many runs we have. Erica also gets credit for an RBI, a run batted in, because Sarah scored when she hit that ball. As you can see the girls are doing really well this game, and they're going to go all the way around the lineup, which means we're coming back to Jennifer, who started the inning. But obviously we're not going to be able to write in that block. So my recommendation is you make an arrow that shows we're still in the same inning, but I'm going to switch over to here. At the top, you'll just adjust it so it says you're still in the second inning. Now when Sam comes up to bat, go ahead and write what happened with Sam. In this case, Sam's going to hit it into right field, and it's going to be caught. But because it's caught, and because it's deep in the right field, Julie's going to score. If you remember, she was on third base. Erica is going to score. She was on second, but she was able to make it all the way home. And even though Sam got out, so a fly ball to right field, this is the second out of the inning, she still gets credit for 2 RBIs. And it's a sacrifice for the fact that she was able to hit it so deep that people could score. Sacrifices don't count against your batting order. That's why it's important to keep track of those. Okay, now it's your turn. Watch the video and write down how you would record it.
There we go!
If you said 1-3, you are correct. It was hit to the pitcher and she threw it to the first baseman. She got her out, so then you would also make a 1 and circle it. 1, 3, and she was out. This time it was a hit. Nobody was anywhere close enough to catch the ball, so she got a legitimate hit, a single into right field, and we put her on base. Go ahead and see if you can figure out the next one. This time the ball was hit to the second baseman and she threw it to first base. So if you put 4-3, you would be correct. And she got her out. In this case, we're going to put a 2. On this one, it was hit to the shortstop, who threw to first base. Notice the first baseman made a really nice stretch, and she got her out. So you would write shortstop, so 6-3, with an out. If for some reason the first baseman would have pulled her foot, meaning when she caught the ball, her foot wasn't touching the base, there would be an error on the play. Then it becomes a judgment call whether you think the throw was bad and that's why she missed it. If that was the case, it would be an error on the shortstop who threw it to third base or first base. Or if it was catchable but the first baseman missed it, it would actually be 6-3, and the error would go on the first baseman. And you would actually mark them here. A bunt is when the batter doesn't swing at the ball, but instead places the bat across the plate parallel to the ground. For this one, she bunted it, the third baseman picked it up, and threw it to first base for an out. So third base to first, and she got an out.
Please! Come on! Whoa! Run it back!
This one's a little trickier to score. Again, it's a bunt. but because the pitcher picked up the ball and did not throw it, it's really an error on the pitcher. If she had thrown the ball to third base where the runner was and got her out, then it would have been considered a fielder's choice. So in this case, it's a bunt, and she gets on base. And it's an error on the pitcher. All right, again, we have a tricky one for you. The first part's easy because the batter popped up the bunt and the third baseman caught it. So that would be, you could mark it as an F because it actually went up in the air. So F for fly ball to the third baseman, which is 5. And she did get her out. Now she was trying for a double play. So when she threw the ball to first base, she didn't get her at first because she had a bad throw. That would be an error on her part, but it depends on how much your coach wants for detail. That's when this part of the box comes in handy, because you can write exactly what happened and the coach can decide later what he wants to do with that information.
Nice pitch. Oh, no. Get it in!
In fast pitch, there's a rule called the drop third strike. If there's less than 2 outs and first base is not occupied, if the batter swings or it's a called third strike and the catcher drops the ball, it's considered a dropped pitch and the runner can run. All they have to do, the defensive team, they can either pick up the ball and tag the runner or they can throw it to first base. In this case, they threw it to first base and got her out. So this is a dropped third strike. We'll say she swung at it and missed it, but she's still out. So you put the K this way because she swung. Remember, if she was standing there, we would have done a backwards K. And we'll say that was the second out.
Come on, run! She did not catch the ball.
This is another example of a dropped third strike. But the batter didn't get out, but they did strike out. They did get 3 strikes on them, and the coach is going to want to know that. So let me catch up for our example. You might want to make the K a little bit smaller because she did strike out, but it doesn't count as an out because there was an error on the catcher. The catcher picked up the ball, made an error, and threw it to first base, but the runner got on. A lot going on in that play, so again, feel free to use this part of the box. All right, this was an easy one for you. It was a fly ball to the second baseman with an out. This is a foul ball. If it was the first pitch, it would just be marked down as a strike. Here's another example of a foul ball. This time it was right on the line and it was very close, so the umpire made a call. You can hear him yell foul in the background. Again, it counts as a strike for the batter. If the umpire doesn't say anything, it is considered a fair ball and the girl should keep playing. The umpire is not supposed to call fair balls. This is an example of a pass ball. So the batter gets a ball and the runner stole third base. To show that she stole third base on a pass ball, you would put a little PB. If the catcher had caught the ball and she ran to third base on a steal and just beat out the throw, you would put an S there for steal. Kind of like in this example. This was a pass ball steal. This is when she stole straight to third base. In this case, we're saying the runner got on base on ball, so she walked. But then she stole on the next pitch. So she ran to second base. That would be a steal. And there was an error on the play. Again, it comes down to a judgment call. Was it a bad throw that could have been caught? Or was the runner just faster than the throw? If the runner was just faster than the throw, which I think was the case in this one, then there's no error and she gets a steal and the catcher does not get an error. But if the throw was right on and say the shortstop, the ball was in her glove and then she dropped it, it would be an error on the shortstop. So you might put a little, instead of just the steal here, you might put an E6 next to that, saying that the shortstop missed the ball.
There it is.
This is a straightforward example of a swinging strike. So you put your K forward and you mark her as an out. The difference between a pass ball and a wild pitch is the pass ball is usually on the ground and the catcher should have been able to stop and block it. On a wild pitch, which you would mark with a W inside the ball column, means that the ball was not catchable by the catcher, probably over their head, as it was in this case.
Look at third. Look at third. Look at third.
In this case, it was a called ball 4, which means it wasn't a good pitch, and the runner is going to take their base. So it's a base on balls. Notice how she's hustling. That's because it was a passed ball. And if the catcher isn't quick enough, the girl might make it to first on the walk, but she might be able to run fast enough to make it all the way to second on a steal. That's why the girls are taught to run all the way to first base no matter what. I know we covered a lot of information, but if you forget, you can look in the back of this scorebook and it actually gives you scoring instructions and other helpful hints